Welcome to Talking Kootenay Books. My name is Keith Powell. I'm your host. And with me today is our guest, Mike Selby. Mike is the Deputy Director at the Cranbrook Public Library. Nice to have you back on the set. I think we've talked a few times. And an exciting time because it's the 100th anniversary of the library. And you've put out a book to commemorate that. So congratulations. We want to sort of delve into that and just talk about some of the history and some of the colorful things that have happened over the last 100 years when it comes to the Cranbrook Library. So the book, Who We Are, 100 Years of History of the Cranbrook Public Library, really documents that and allows people to sort of delve into that interesting history. So Mike, can you just give me sort of a timeline? How did things develop and start with the Cranbrook Library?
Great, thanks Keith. So the history of the library is basically the history of Cranbrook itself. Mm-hmm. One of buildings and people in the late 1800s. The railway arrived in 1898. That changed everything.
Right.
It brought people, the population became about 4,000 to 5,000, and those people could read and write. Illiteracy was at 25%, according to the people in Cranbrook. After the railway came, it was down to 10%. Unfortunately, in modern times, we're back up to that 25%.
Really? That surprises me.
Yeah, they measure it differently. They measure it with digital skills, social skills, and emotional intelligence now, not just reading and writing.
So the train came 1898, and so the population grew, and obviously they must have seen a need for somewhere to get a lending library going.
They did. Book ownership wasn't unheard of, but it was pretty rare at that time. But there's 3 newspapers going on that time, the Prospector and the Cranbrook Courier and the Cranbrook Herald. Okay. So that's a lot.
Right.
So people could read and write, but there wasn't a place to get books. There was what I'd call pseudo-libraries showed up.
What do you mean by that?
Sort of, they're not a public government, what we think of like a tax-supported public library. BD and Atkinson drugstore, they had a subscription library. You could subscribe to them. I think they were just around by the Cranbrook Hotel. The Cranbrook Hotel itself had the traveling men's library. It had 100 books that people could borrow. You couldn't leave the hotel, and you probably had to be staying at the hotel. It's unknown.
Maybe you could have a beer and drink and read at the same time.
But the railroad is right there, and that's the main employer, right? Okay. And a lot of them stayed there.
So in the drugstore, in the hotel?
Yeah, the Chinese Masonic on 7th Avenue now, they offered a free library. In Chinese, there was a lot of Chinese people moving to the area at that time and lived here. So they had a library too. Everyone was welcome. It was unknown if anyone who wasn't Chinese would want to read, but I know talking to historians about that, everyone was welcome. There just wasn't a public library. Right. And people noticed that. The newspapers are full of editorials, people traveling through, why does Cranbrook not have a public library? Was
that something that was common in other communities?
It was, mostly the big ones, but Cranbrook was sort of the center of this area. Vancouver, New Westminster, and Victoria are the only places that had public libraries at the time. That's pretty far for Cranbrook people to go.
No, of course, yeah. So there was sort of a desire there to have a library. How did that all sort of transpire and come together, and sort of what was sort of the first, you might say, public library?
Yeah, I would say the first one, the province knew this was an issue, especially in Cranbrook. So the original plan, they said 100 books. They were stored over Mignot's tobacco store, which is currently on Baker Street where Hush Furniture is. Okay. Up there in a room, they sent 100 books. They sent a bunch of rules that they promised a librarian would come and people could check out, but no librarian came. It was sort of a fantasy on paper, but because they sent books that there was no way to train and have people in all these towns. So they sent the books, and in true Cranbrook fashion, all the books were stolen almost immediately.
Well, you got to give us a bit more credit than that, Mike. Okay, so the books disappeared.
They disappeared.
Is that the end of the library then?
That is not the end. The actually editor of the Prospector noticed they were missing and put a call out. Only 1 book was ever returned. Okay. But people needed a library. So finally, 12 individuals gathered in February, I believe, of 1925. They met, the railway had a big YMCA at the end of Baker Street.
That's right.
They met there in the evening, and they said, we need a public library. So they canvassed the town. They asked people if they want memberships. it's kind of humorous because if you said no, they still wrote your name down, so everyone would know that you didn't want to support the public library.
Okay, nothing like public shaming.
That's right. But they had enough. They finally, the city was going to give a grant. The province was going to support it and this membership. So they were going to open it at that YMCA. That was the plan. And then like a week before, they moved to the Cranbrook Post Office, which is where CIBC Banking is now, and the old clock tower used to be.
Right,
No
so-
one wrote down why they left the YMCA. I'm thinking it was CPR is a private company, and that might have to do something with public funds.
Right. So that was a CPR building, I believe, at the time.
Yeah.
Where the post office was called the Dominion Building. So chances are they probably could have some relationship through government with that building, I would think. Yeah.
I think so, yeah. So, and also someone at the last minute said we should hire a librarian. So they put an ad in the 3 newspapers that Cranbrook had. Amy Sabina Ramsey was the first one, first librarian in Cranbrook. They hired her.
Was she from Cranbrook? or-
Her parents had just moved here.
Okay.
Originally, she was from England. There isn't much known about her. I know her occupation on her landed thing said she was a school marm. So I don't know how much library training, but she was the first librarian. They paid her $15 a month.
Wow. So she was probably a teacher that loved books or something along that line.
I think so, yeah.
Okay. So she became the first official librarian. How long did she stay on the job?
Probably 25 years, and then she passed away suddenly. Again, no one but the town really missed her. The town, they had a moment of silence over the city. The railway blew their horn, so everyone really missed Amy, who didn't have kids or brothers and sisters. So it must have been really nice.
So her passion obviously was getting that library up and running and running it for 25 years. Did it stay at the Dominion Building or the post office the whole time?
No, it did not. It moved. The problem with public libraries, they're growing organisms, especially if the population around it is growing. So soon enough, there was no room at the post office. So in 1958, they moved to the courthouse, used the back end sort of basement of the courthouse, where the courthouse is now.
Right. So that's my personal connection to the library. I grew up in Jaffrey, and our family would come into Cranbrook every 2 weeks, and we'd go to Rotary Park, and then we'd go across the street to the courthouse or the library and spend a good couple of hours in the public library. So it was a tremendous asset, I'm sure, to the community at that point in time. What improvements came with that move?
The Dewey Decimal System was finally, I don't know how they were doing it before that, but that was employed. And before that, you would just have shelf lists. They'd hang a list of books on the shelf. There was no card catalog at the time, but that was coming into the courthouse.
Right.
That's great. You were there. I've only met one other person that used the library, Mayor Wayne Price of Cranbrook. He used to use that.
Yeah, no.
He has fond memories.
Yeah, I remember that. My father was a great reader, and he loved to go to the library, and I always tagged along and enjoyed the experience as well. Okay, so who was the librarian once it moved to the courthouse?
After Amy, it was, I cannot recall her name. I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem.
Another woman who was an ex-teacher
Okay,
as well
and she ran it for a
took
number of
over.
years?
She ran it for a number of years.
Okay, so it was at the courthouse for how long?
58 to 1971,
Okay.
and again, it just was getting too crowded and too
Yeah.
big. And
If I remember right, it was on the south wing, and it was pretty cramped, and there was a lot of books and not a lot of room.
right,
so,
yeah. So
yeah. So 71. What transpired in 71?
they were able to move into a temporary building right where the Recplex is now. It was Beaumont Park. They were building a new swimming pool the year before there, and there was room for a library to be built.
Right.
So they moved there, and Jessie Sly became the librarian.
I remember her as well. So we're now at Beaumont Park. There's a photo in the book. It's one of my favorites. It's a little guy with a shovel doing the groundbreaking. So obviously there was either a referendum or an agreement to to build a library? How did that all come about?
I think they would have had a referendum for people voting
Yeah.
for a library. So yeah, they really needed to move out of the courthouse.
Right.
And this, to have their own building, is a dream.
Right. So how did that all transpire?
So 1971, they got the funds from the city and the province, and they were able to build.
Right next to
And
the pool?
Right next to the
So
pool.
there's a little bit of a community center.
It is. There was the pool and the curling rink and the library
Mm-hmm.
for the entire time I grew up in Cranbrook. That was sort of the central
Right.
sort of recreation. Prime Minister Trudeau at the time, he came to open the pool and he visited the library, which I talk about in the books because, again, no one wrote down that he visited the library. It took some research to find out that whether he did or not.
Right. So I don't want to digress, and we want to come back and talk about that. But that's one thing that I really admired about your book. In fact, at the back you list, all your sources and information. And Mike, you did a tremendous amount of research and spent time really delving into that history. How fulfilling? How did you like that process?
Yeah, that's the fun part for me anyway, just learning. I'm a fourth generation Cranbrook resident, lifelong user of the Cranbrook Public Library, and just to research and find out all these hidden stories over the past century. Yeah, very fulfilling, really rewarding.
Well, I had the privilege of helping you put this book together and work on it. And when I was reading through it, and to me, these stories are just fascinating, and they just give a snapshot of the legacy of Cranbrook. It just talks to the history, it talks to the people, talks to the community, and I thought you did a really nice job of sort of capturing that and getting the essence of the community. So well done there.
Oh, thank you.
So let's go back to
Sure.
71. So we've got a new library going to be built. They break the ground. How did that process go?
So broke the ground, it was built. It was one of these temporary sort of trailer material you'd see sort of put together until the city would build a new one. Every 10 years, if you look throughout the history, the city or someone's going to build a new building, and it just doesn't happen. So it was in the temporary thing for a few decades.
Well, I visited that library many, many times, and I can remember that it seemed to start to deteriorate a bit. The building itself just didn't, to me, hold the test of time. Was that true?
Yeah, because I grew up using that library too, and there's plants going through the cracks in the wall, and it was usually flooded, and the roof wasn't very good, and Mount Baker High School would play baseball out there, and there'd be broken windows all over the place. But it was a library. It was a place where I don't think anyone really noticed.
Right. So it was the central library for the city, and yet, there was an effort. I think people could see the fact that it needed a better location. Well, the location was probably okay, but it needed a better building. And what transpired to sort of make that happen? I know it was an exercise that took a while.
It did. It went through the 90s and referendums again. Can we get a new library? And it was voted no. 92 or something, I'm not sure, I'll have to check that out, but one was voted no, and it took them till like 2003 for a yes vote to move the library out of there.
Right. So it needed the agreement of the citizens and support of the citizens. So finally it did happen. The library moved to the location it is now. How did that all come about? It seemed like an ideal situation in my mind, and it seemed to fall together fairly quickly.
It did. So I should go back to the librarians.
Okay.
Jesse Sly was unfortunately killed in a car accident. We had two male librarians in the mid-70s. They didn't last very quickly. And then Pat Adams was librarian for the next 25 years. She worked really hard at trying to get the library into something else.
Right.
When she retired, Ursula Briegel, the current chief librarian, took over, and she was just a powerhouse to get the library moved. It was talked about moving into the Tamarack Mall at one point. It was talked about building sort of a building onto the College of the Rockies, and then the health unit came up, and the city said, "How about here?" And it was just perfect.
Yeah, it's a great location, great building, sort of close to downtown, and the building was new enough that the renovations worked very well at making it a permanent.
Yeah, they've done a
place.
great job.
Well, I have to tell you a story. Like I have a little bit of history with the library because I served as a director for 8 years, I guess it was. And the first meeting I showed up, it was in the Walmart Park location, and the chairman of the board at that point and said, "Wow, we'd like to move, but you know what? We're just short of one thing." And I said, "Well, what's that?" And he said, "Shelves." So the move had been agreed upon. A new location had been selected, but they had no shelves. So we had to really scramble. We came up with a few creative ideas to raise some money to get the community to help us have shelves for our new library. That sort of spawned the Idlewild Music Festival, which we used as a fundraiser.
Yes.
And it allowed us to sort of leverage that money and actually put shelves in for when we moved the books. So let's just talk about the new location. How long have you been there now?
I've been there 20 years now.
Okay. And Ursula's been head librarian for
25 years, I think, or 20, it could be. She started as a page in high school and came back worked sort of as the tech help and summer reading, and then she was really the perfect person to take over.
Sure. And I think it takes a special person to be a librarian. I know Pat Adams had a passion for the library and did a lot of innovative things. And Ursula, she like you said, really has a force behind her to make sure that the library is looked after and it serves the community so well. So, which sort of leads me into this question: why is a public library so important to a community?
It has to do. We can go back to the book ownership and literacy rates. 25% of Canadians don't own a single book in their homes, which kind of frightens some people when they hear that. And I keep checking that statistic, but it's held at that level for the past 15 years. So for a lot of people, a quarter of the population that reports that they don't own books, the library is a lifeline. Think of the children that grow up in these houses. The library is their only chance to interact with books and learning and reading for free.
Right. And that's one great thing about the public library system, right? It is free, it's open to everyone, it's sort of a level playing ground, and it gives everyone an equal opportunity. That's sort of the mandate of a public library.
Well, that's it, right? Free basic library service for everyone. So if you live in the area, or Area C as well, what the old board minutes used to call country people, it's free to use, and if you don't live here, you can get a visitor's card to use as well. So
let's just talk about some of the stories that maybe jumped out when you were doing your research and you were able to record them. And I think it's so important that you did document those stories so that we can all enjoy them and go back and look at them. Any favorite stories that sort of came to mind?
Sure. One I remember at the library at Belmont Park location had a totem pole out front. And so in researching that, it's when they moved in 71, in 72, the board decided they found out Kootenay used to have a meeting. Kootenay Nation this used to be a meeting place for them. So they commissioned a Scandinavian lady to carve this wonderful totem pole to put up. And the city put it up, and the board invited the Kootenay to come, and Kootenay said no, because totem poles aren't part of their culture, and which the library had a bunch of books on that they should have known.
Right.
So that was one story.
Right.
The totem pole was stolen one night.
Okay. So my question is, whatever happened to the totem pole?
During the move to the health unit now, it was there, and they had a crane, because there's a huge log that was carved to move that, and they came back to get a totem pole, and it was gone. So it could be in someone's basement, maybe.
It's disappeared.
Yes.
The case of the disappearing totem pole. Yeah, so again, being insensitive to culture was something that they had to address at that point in time as well. So just talking about some of your other favorite stories, anything else jump out as you did your research and documented this?
Sort of personal connections I found. the first city council that Cranbrook had, they were instrumental, and one was Joe Jackson, who was my great-grandfather on my maternal side. He was one of the original city councilors, and he was really, let's give this library a grant.
What year was that?
That would have been 1925,
Oh, okay.
24,
So you do have
just starting.
a long legacy.
Yeah, a
in
long
Cranbrook.
legacy.
Yeah.
The shelves and the labor came from Cranbrook Sash and Door,
Yeah.
where my other great-grandfather was, where Charles Selby was instrumental in making sure the library got what they needed.
Right.
And so it was weird, that kind of, those two.
So it's only appropriate that you ended up being the deputy director.
Yes,
of the
that's
library.
right, and could write about them. So that was surprising.
Right.
That it's lasted 100 years is very surprising.
Right.
At the time, libraries came and went all over the province.
Right.
You really need a sustaining force.
Mhm.
The College of the Rockies just celebrated their 50th, and the president there, Michael Crow, he said, can you imagine 50 years ago at the college or 100 years ago at the public library, if the people starting it were duds and they just couldn't get anything going.
Right.
So we're very lucky to have very
Mhm.
sort of forward-thinking, ambitious people that work very hard.
Well, it really speaks to the fact that they had passion and they were dynamic enough to get out and advocate for something like that that they could see was so valuable for the community.
Yeah.
Yeah. So any other stories, Mike, that sort of pop out?
There's lots. The Jaffrey sort of referred to as country people. There was a weird formula that they could use. People in Area C had to follow. The math was very difficult. The best stories are the letters from little kids who couldn't spell, but were grateful at all stages of the library to come and have a tour and learn, and adults who couldn't read or didn't have any experience with books and reading felt welcome there.
Sure. So, we automatically think of books and library going together, but our modern day library is far more than just books. Maybe just talk a little bit about how that has evolved and developed.
Yeah, so it's really been a resource for a lot of things, and part of literacy now is digital literacy, and the library's really, got the first computer program in 1980, built it in-house, and so that seems to me really early. But to help people learn the internet and learn email, and seniors, if they get which I'm approaching, get a smartphone or something, they can come to the library and someone will help them use it. We also have 3D printers and a vocal booth and sort of a library of things, sort of non-traditional things that would be too expensive for people to get, but they can come to the library and use for free.
Right. I did an article not that long ago about, I think it was called the Library of Things. So, you can come into the library and rent, or not rent, but borrow things like cupcake holders or
cake pans and
cake
stuff.
pans,
Yes.
or that kind of thing. So, it's a resource that people can use in their daily life, and it just makes it, accessible and affordable to a lot of people.
Right. And the digital divide, too, is another, that not everyone has devices, not everyone can afford internet. And the library can, is there for everyone. The Wi-Fi goes out around the building, so even when we're not open, people can use our Wi-Fi.
Right.
And crucial for people who cannot afford it, but you need that to work, to function in today's society.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So again, a really nice job of putting this together and documenting the history. Now, there was a chapter there that you focus in on, the book that you published, and that was Freedom Libraries. Just talk about that experience and how that connected to your experience at the library.
Yeah, so I wrote a book about libraries during the civil rights movement, the American civil rights movement in the 60s, called Freedom Libraries, and I could really see these were African Americans weren't allowed to use libraries in the United States, even though they paid taxes to keep these libraries going. So that was really a passion of mine, and to have that book published was something, and it really, took me places that I didn't think I'd go.
Yeah, I know. And hats off to you, because I know that you probably won't admit it, but it was an award-winning book. You've been really mentioned a number of times in the accomplishments that you did in publishing that. So congratulations.
Thank you.
I think it told a story that very few people knew about or were aware of. And I always wonder we've interviewed you before about that. What was your connection to that story initially?
I tripped over the word Freedom Libraries when I was in library school, and I wanted to know more, and there just wasn't anything published or written about it. So I kind of got obsessed and was researching and found out quite a bit, and it was a story that needed to be told.
Right. Okay, so we're talking about 100 years of history of the Cranbrook Public Library, and so you've got the new book out, and people can purchase a copy, and you'll have it at the library, of course. Anywhere else that you'll have the book available?
Oh yeah, Huckleberries and
Pages?
Pages,
Okay.
Indigo, I think it's called. It used to be Coles, I always want to say
Okay.
it, but I think it's Indigo.
Mhm.
They should carry it, and at the library. Plus,
Okay.
you can check out copies at no cost.
Okay. Okay, so it'll give you that opportunity to get the book out there and have the community maybe learn a little bit about the history. You know, the thing about the history is that it just helps you build an appreciation of what we have today, because what we have today is really great, but it didn't just happen. It took a lot of hard work,
No,
and
right,
a lot of passion, a lot of persistence to provide the community with such a good facility. So, Mike, I think you wanted to just make reference to a quote from the book.
I did. I just
did you want to share that with us?
Yeah, please. Just wanted to read, because I wouldn't be able to. Just to say, how important the Cranbrook Library isn't important. It's essential, irreplaceable, and incomparable. For the past 100 years, it's reflected Cranbrook's intellectual energy, creativity, productivity, and its humanity. The people of Cranbrook enjoy life and prosper more because of the library. It has been and continues to be responsible for the cultural, economic, educational, social, and digital health of the city. And Cranbrook's a better place because of the library.
Well put, and I certainly have to agree with you. So who we are, 100 years of history of the Cranbrook Public Library, written by Mike Selby. And Mike, good job. And I love the stories that you tell in there, and just bring out the history in such an informative way. Good job, and I appreciate you took the time to do all that research for us. So I hope people have an opportunity to pick up a copy and read through it.
Great. Thank you, Keith.
Thanks for being a guest. This is Talking Kootenay Books, and my name is Keith Powell.